Hola, and welcome to the last video for chapter 3. This video is going to look at two verbs, saber and conocer, and talk about when to use which one, because they both mean the same thing. They both mean to know. So let's go over each verb first and talk about how to conjugate them. So first we'll look at saber. Saber means to know, and it is irregular in the yo form, as you hopefully have seen in the last video that was all about verbs that are in the irregular in the yo form only. Saber is a verb that's irregular in the yo form only. So it is an ER verb. If you drop the ER and add the ER verb endings, in all the forms except yo. Yo is sé, and notice the accent on the E in sé. That means I know, yo sé. Tú sabes, él, ella, usted sabe, nosotros sabemos, vosotros sabéis, ellos, ellas, ustedes saben. We use the verb saber to talk about knowing a fact or a piece of information. And we use the verb saber when we talk about knowing how to do something, in other words, next to a verb. So facts and information, this is the way we would say, like, I know. Like if somebody tells you something, you already know that. You'd say, yo sé. Or if somebody asks you a question that you don't know the answer to, no sé. No sé. I don't know. When we use it to talk about knowing how to do something, we go back to that rule about two verbs in the same verb phrase, that compound verb phrase idea. You're going to conjugate the first verb and you're going to leave that second verb unconjugated. For example, I could say, yo sé hablar español. I know how to speak Spanish. Or mi hija sabe bailar. My daughter knows how to dance. Notice saber is conjugated, bailar is left unconjugated. Conjugate the first verb, leave that second one alone. Nosotros sabemos jugar tenis. We know how to play tennis. Okay, so we're going to conjugate saber to leave that second verb unconjugated. And then, like I said, use saber to talk about knowing information. The other verb that also means to know is the verb conocer. Conocer, like saber, is also irregular in the yo form only. It's also an ER verb. The yo form is conozco. It takes that Z before the C. And then it is regular in all the other forms. So tú conoces, él, ella, usted conoce, nosotros conocemos, vosotros conocéis, ellos, ellas, ustedes conocen. We use this verb to know when we're talking about knowing a person or being acquainted with a person, place, thing, or idea. So talking about knowing a noun, not knowing information. So the way I like to think about this verb is usually we're using it to talk about knowing people. Hey, you know my friend, you know my mom, you know that teacher, you know that person. But also being familiar with a place, thing, or idea. Do you know the mall in that area, or are you familiar with that tool that you would use for that kind of thing? So I like to check it if you could replace the to know with being familiar with a thing, a place, a person, or an idea, you're going to use conocer. Anytime you're talking about knowing a specific person, you're going to follow conocer with this, what's called the personal a. So you need to follow it with the letter A. And so it sounds like this. Yo conozco a tu amigo. I know your friend. Bob. I know your friend, Bob. Or ella conoce a mi mamá. She knows my mom. My mom is a specific person. Bob is a specific person. Nosotros conocemos a Profesora Ruiz. We know Profesora Ruiz. She's a specific person. The only time I can think of that you would not need that personal is if you're talking about not a specific person, but a type of person. For example, instead of saying, we know Profesora Ruiz, we can ask a question. ¿Conoces una profesora de español? That's not a specific person. That's just a type of person. Do you know a Spanish teacher? Not specific. So you do not need to follow it with that a. You don't say conoces a una profesora de español. ¿Conoces una profesora de español? Okay, but usually most of the time we are talking about a specific person. So you're going to follow it with a when you're talking about knowing a person. You can also use conocer to talk about knowing a place. Like, yo conozco la ciudad de Atlanta. I know Atlanta. I'm familiar with it. Kind of like that. There's that I'm familiar with it. If you replace it with familiar with, a place, familiar with an idea, familiar with a thing, use conocer. So let's practice with that. So again, we're going to use, you're going to use saber to talk about knowing a fact or knowing a piece of information or knowing how to do something. So with a verb. Use conocer to talk about knowing a person or being acquainted with or familiar with a thing, place, or idea. So each of these sentences has a blank, and you would need to choose whether you would put saber in the blank or conocer. You also need to conjugate the verb when you put it in the blank. So based on the rules that we just went over, take a moment, pause the video, and go through these sentences. Decide if you would use saber and conocer based on the rules, and then conjugate. And when you're done, go ahead and press play, and I'll go over the answers with you. Okay, so hopefully the first one you said, yo sé hablar español. I know how to speak Spanish, because it's used with a verb. We're going to use the verb saber, and then the yo form is sé. Tú conoces a mi amigo Raúl. Do you know my friend Raúl? Raúl is a specific person, and talking about knowing a person, so you use conocer, conjugate it for tú. Nosotros sabemos la hora de la clase. La hora de la clase is the time of the class. So it's a piece of information, or it's a fact about the class. That's why we would use saber instead of conocer. Conjugate for nosotros, it is sabemos. Ellas conocen la ciudad de Nueva York. Being familiar with a place, in this case a city. And so it would be conocer conjugated for ellas. Ellas conocen. Usted conoce la música de Shakira. Are you familiar with, do you know, are you familiar with Shakira's music? So conocer is the correct verb, conjugate it for usted. Usted conoce. Vosotros sabéis esquiar. You know how, you all in Spain know how to ski. It's talking about knowing how to do something. It's used with a verb, so we use saber. And then ellos conocen el centro comercial. El centro comercial is the word for the mall. So it's a place, talking about being familiar with a place. Ellos conocen. So hopefully you did pretty well on those questions. In your Chapter 3 grammar quiz, this is what you're going to be asked to do. You're going to be asked to choose, would you use saber or conocer based on the rules that we went over, and then you also must be able to conjugate them correctly. So be prepared to be doing something like this on your quiz. And I do have just a few questions, not many, that you can answer using saber and conocer. So the first one, ¿conoces Seattle? Are you familiar with Seattle? Do you know your way around? This is yes or no. So If the answer is yes, sí, conozco Seattle, or no, no conozco Seattle. ¿Sabes contar en español? Contar is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Contar, to count. ¿Sabes contar en español? I'm sure the answer will be sí. Sé contar en español. ¿Saben ustedes cuándo es la fiesta? So this question is not asking about what you know, it's asking ustedes. Do you all know when the party is? It's an imaginary party, so you can either say yes, we know, or no, we do not know. But the thing I wanted to point out about this question is that it is conjugated, it's asking all of you. So when you answer this question, take a moment to think about who you need to answer it for. Somebody said, do you all know when the party is? Would you say, I know when the party is? No, you would need to say, we know, or no, we don't know when the party is. So I want you to conjugate your answer in the nosotros form. No, no sabemos cuándo es la fiesta. Or sí sabemos, that's up to you. And the last one, ¿conoces a Sonia y Bruno, los otros profesores de español? Do you know Sonia and Bruno, the other Spanish teachers? So this is also a yes or no question. I use the personal a because Sonia and Bruno are specific people. Do you know them? Either sí, conozco a Sonia y Bruno, or no, no conozco a Sonia y Bruno. And that is a wrap. So that's the last thing for chapter 3. I will, so chapter 3, the last 2 sections are in 2 separate videos. I made the first one a while ago. Same exact thing, it's just in two videos. So there's actually 3 flips that you need to look at for chapter 3. And I look forward to hearing all of your responses. As always, don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions or want some more information about any of it. I'm here for you. Happy flipping. Adios.